My name is Olivia. I'm 32 years old, and on my 7th wedding anniversary, my mother-in-law handed me divorce papers across a candlelit table. The restaurant was glowing that night. Chandeliers shimmered above, jazz drifted in the background, and crystal glasses sparkled like they were part of a celebration. I wore a silver dress Ethan once said made me look unforgettable. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd notice again. Instead, Margaret leaned forward with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. She slid a velvet envelope toward me. "A little surprise for you, Olivia," she said, her voice sweet, mocking. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, pages with bold letters. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Ethan's signature already scrawled at the bottom. The world went silent. I felt my chest collapse, as though someone had stolen the air from the room. A fork clattered from a nearby table. No one spoke. All eyes seemed to be on me, the woman being discarded in public. I looked at Ethan, my husband of 7 years, the man I gave up dreams for. He didn't even meet my eyes. He just sipped his wine, cold, detached, like none of this had anything to do with him. Margaret leaned back, satisfied. "Didn't see that one coming, did you, dear?" Heat surged up my throat. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw the envelope in her smug face. But I didn't. I couldn't. She wanted that. She wanted me broken. So I forced my voice steady. "Thank you," I whispered. It wasn't gratitude. It was defiance. Have you ever been humiliated so deeply that your body no longer feels like your own? That was me. Sitting there under the golden lights, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned the music. Dinner carried on as though nothing had happened. Margaret laughed about her birthday party plans, describing the chandeliers she had rented and the gowns she was considering. Ethan nodded along, his silence like a second betrayal. I pushed food around my plate, every bite turning to ash in my mouth. But beneath the humiliation, something shifted. For years, I had chased their approval. I had endured the small cuts, the mocking jokes, the way Ethan's silence always hung heavier than Margaret's words. I had told myself love required sacrifice. But in that moment, staring at the divorce papers glowing in candlelight, I understood something new. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was a stage Margaret had built to watch me crumble. And if she wanted theater, I would give her one. My humiliation hardened into resolve. My tears dried before they could fall. The papers in front of me were not a death sentence. They were an invitation to stop being the silent woman at the table, an invitation to rise. Margaret believed she had ended me that night. She had no idea she had just created the woman who would end her. I didn't come from luxury. I came from a small house in Seattle, where my parents taught history and literature at the local high school. Our front porch needed paint. Our dinners were simple, but laughter filled every corner. Maybe that's why Margaret's world felt like another planet. Her marble floors, her crystal chandeliers, her obsession with appearances. Where I came from, love mattered more than image. In her world, image was everything. When I first met Ethan in college, he was electric. Confident, ambitious, the kind of man who made everyone lean in when he spoke. I was drawn to his energy, the way he said he admired my focus, how I balanced classes, 2 part-time jobs, and still made time to tutor others. For the first time, someone saw me not as the responsible daughter, but as a woman worth chasing. When he asked me to marry him, I didn't hesitate. I believed in us. I believed in building a life together. I even gave up graduate school to support him while he chased his dream of starting a business. I worked nights, covered rent, managed bills, told myself it was temporary. Isn't that what love means? Carrying the weight until your partner can? But somewhere along the way, the weight became mine alone. Margaret had made up her mind about me the first night I entered her home. She smiled politely but scanned me like an examiner marking flaws. The wrong dress, the wrong wine choice, the wrong family background. Nothing I did was ever right. At dinners, she turned compliments into daggers. "Olivia doesn't quite have the taste for luxury, does she?" She'd laugh, and everyone else would follow. And Ethan? He stayed quiet. Always quiet. He didn't disagree with her. He didn't defend me. He just sat there, sipping his drink, pretending not to notice. Silence was his choice, and it cut deeper than her words. At first, I tried harder. I hosted Thanksgiving, cooked elaborate meals, bought thoughtful gifts. I thought kindness could win her over. But every attempt only gave her new material to criticize. My mashed potatoes were too plain. My dress was too modest. Even my laugh was a little too loud. It was a performance I could never win. Have you ever tried so hard to be accepted that you lose sight of yourself? That was me. I shrank a little more each year, folding myself smaller to fit their expectations, hoping one day they'd see me as enough. Meanwhile, Ethan's business grew. We celebrated his success with champagne and applause. He stood tall, telling stories of his hard work, while I stood behind him, invisible. No one saw the nights I stayed up balancing spreadsheets, the savings I poured into his projects when clients delayed payments. I told myself it didn't matter. His success was our success. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Margaret's whispers grew bolder as Ethan's confidence swelled. "You could do better," she'd murmur to him. "Find someone who truly fits our family." I pretended not to hear, but her words clung to me like smoke. Looking back, I realized the silence was the loudest betrayal. Ethan didn't need to cheat or scream to hurt me. All he had to do was let his mother's disdain echo unchecked, and I became smaller with every passing year. By the time the velvet envelope appeared on that anniversary table, I shouldn't have been shocked. Margaret had been planning my erasure for years. Ethan had already withdrawn long before his signature touched those papers. But shock has a way of sharpening old wounds. That night, every sacrifice I'd made pressed down on me. Every humiliation replayed in my mind. And for the first time, I stopped wanting her approval. I stopped wanting his attention. For the first time, I wanted something else entirely. Justice. The months that followed were filled with tiny humiliations, each one small enough to dismiss, but sharp enough to wound. Margaret had a way of turning casual remarks into weapons. At family dinners, she would glance at my outfit and smirk. "Interesting choice, Olivia. Not everyone can pull off such simple fabrics." Laughter rippled around the table, rehearsed and cruel. I smiled, pretending it didn't matter, but each word lodged deep. Ethan never stopped her. Not once. He would sip his drink, scroll his phone, let me burn under their eyes. Silence became his weapon, sharper than anything Margaret said. Have you ever begged silently for someone you love to defend you? Just one word, one glance, and watched them choose nothing instead? That became my normal. The isolation grew. Invitations to family events often forgot my name. Ethan would mention them casually the night before, as if it didn't matter whether I came. And when I did show up, I was invisible. Conversations spun around me. Business deals, vacations, weddings of people I had never met. My words fell flat, ignored before they even left my lips. Margaret perfected the art of pretending not to hear me, her head turning slightly every time I spoke. It was like I was fading, erased piece by piece. At home, Ethan drifted further away. His side of the bed stayed cold long after midnight. His replies shrank into clipped words. Work. Late? Don't wait up. At first, I believed him, but belief grows heavy when it's never met with truth. Then came the signs I couldn't ignore. The faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine. Lipstick smudges on a collar. When I asked, he laughed, called me paranoid. Margaret backed him up with her steady authority. Men work late, Olivia. Don't burden him with insecurities. That's not attractive. And I, desperate for peace, began to doubt myself. Was I imagining it? Was my loneliness just weakness? The truth arrived on an ordinary afternoon. I came home early. Ethan's phone buzzed on the counter while he showered. I shouldn't have looked, but temptation is stronger than discipline when you already know the answer. The screen lit with messages, photos, intimate words, promises not meant for me. My hands shook as I scrolled, my stomach twisting tighter with each revelation. Then I saw it, Margaret's name mentioned in the thread. Mom thinks you deserve better. She's right. You'll be free soon. The betrayal wasn't just Ethan's affair, it was Margaret's encouragement. My erasure wasn't accidental, it was a family project. I sat in silence, the phone heavy in my hands, the shower masking the sound of my breaking heart. When Ethan walked in, towel wrapped at his waist, I set the phone down and said nothing. He kissed my forehead, oblivious, before walking away. The rage I expected never came. Instead, something colder settled inside me. A quiet, steady calm. From that day, I stopped pleading. I stopped asking questions or waiting for scraps of affection. I became what they wanted me to be, silent, invisible. But my silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. At dinners, I listened. I memorized every insult, every careless confession, every detail of Ethan's business that slipped out when they assumed I wasn't worth noticing. My smile became my disguise, my nods, their reassurance. Inside, I was recording it all. Humiliation had been their weapon. But they didn't realize composure can be sharper than rage. They mistook my patience for weakness. But patience was only the mask I wore while I prepared. The night everything became clear was heavy with rain. Drops streaked across the windows, each one echoing the rhythm of my pulse. Ethan had said he would be home late again. I sat alone in the living room, the silence pressing against me, until restlessness drove me into his office. His briefcase lay open on the desk. For years, I never touched his things. I believed trust meant boundaries. But trust was already broken, and the weight of silence demanded answers. My hands moved before my conscience could stop them. Inside were contracts, receipts, bank statements. At first I skimmed, half curious, half afraid. Then the numbers stopped me cold. Withdrawals I didn't recognize, luxury hotels, jewelry I never received, vacations I was never part of. My stomach knotted as I flipped through the evidence of a life lived outside of me. And then I found it. A folded letter in Margaret's handwriting. Her script was elegant, deliberate, unmistakable. She was never one of us. Don't let guilt trap you. I'll handle her when the time comes. Focus on building the future you deserve. My vision blurred, but not with tears. It was clarity. Margaret hadn't just mocked me. She had orchestrated my erasure. Ethan hadn't just betrayed me. He had allowed her to. It wasn't one betrayal. It was a partnership. Have you ever had pain sharpen into vision? That night, the fog lifted. I saw them both for who they were. Ethan, weak and willing. Margaret, ruthless and calculating. And me, the foundation they had stood on while convincing me I was invisible. I placed the papers back carefully, closed the briefcase, and sat in the quiet glow of the desk lamp. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt awake. I knew then that private confrontation would be useless. Behind closed doors, Ethan could twist my words. Margaret could dismiss me as dramatic. They could bury the truth in silence, the same way they buried me. No. If they wanted humiliation, then humiliation would be my weapon too. Margaret's birthday was weeks away. She had already filled my ears with endless details, the chandeliers, the imported cake, the hundreds of guests who would gather to celebrate her. It would be her grand stage, the night she wanted to shine brighter than ever. And it would be the night I pulled the curtain down. From that moment, I began preparing. I gathered the bank records, the receipts, the screenshots of Ethan's late-night messages, the letter in Margaret's elegant script. I even saved audio recordings, her words dripping with venom when she thought I wasn't worth hearing. Every insult, every lie, every cruel confession became a piece of my arsenal. On the outside, nothing changed. At dinners, I smiled politely. At home, I asked Ethan about his day and nodded at his empty answers. Margaret continued her critiques, her smug laughter ringing over crystal glasses. They thought I was still the silent woman, shrinking into the background. But silence had become my disguise. Behind it, I sharpened the truth like a blade. The rain eventually stopped that night, but inside me, a storm had begun. A storm patient enough to wait. A storm powerful enough to destroy. Margaret believed she had written my ending. Ethan believed his secrets were safe. What neither of them knew was that I had already chosen the stage for their reckoning. And when the chandeliers lit her ballroom, they wouldn't reveal her triumph, they would reveal their downfall. The weeks before Margaret's birthday felt like walking a tightrope. On the surface, I played the same role they had written for me. Quiet, obedient, harmless. But behind closed doors, I was scripting my own ending. Every night after Ethan drifted into sleep, I sat at my desk with my laptop glowing in the dark. Bank records spread out beside me, contracts neatly stacked, screenshots filed away in folders. I built timelines, connected threads, arranged the pieces of betrayal like a puzzle until the full picture stared back at me. It wasn't messy rage, it was methodical. If Margaret wanted spectacle, I would deliver one no guest would ever forget. She called often to boast about her preparations. Imported flowers, chandeliers polished to perfection, a guest list filled with business partners and neighbors she wanted to impress. I listened patiently, murmuring polite encouragements. Inside, I almost smiled. Every person she invited would also be a witness. Have you ever smiled at someone while secretly holding the weapon that will undo them? It's a strange kind of power, a calm that grows sharper each day. The hardest act was with Ethan. Sitting across from him at dinner, pretending not to know about the other woman. Watching him laugh into his phone, hearing him whisper in the hallway at night. I studied his face, wondering how I ever loved a man who betrayed so easily. He believed his secrets were safe. He believed his silence was enough to erase me. He had no idea I was gathering proof that would erase him instead. I disguised my plan as a gift. Margaret adored theatrics, so she expected speeches and slideshows celebrating her. I arranged for a presentation under her name, complete with the perfect introduction. She thought it would be her moment. Instead, it would be mine. In the days leading up to the party, I tested the files, backed them up, rehearsed my words until they no longer trembled. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need rage. The truth alone was heavy enough to shatter everything they had built. Still, I played the part. At family dinners, I endured her snide remarks. Olivia doesn't quite understand fine wine, does she? The table laughed. I laughed too, light and hollow, letting her believe I was still the woman she had silenced. Inside, I was counting the days. I realized something then, how easy it was for them to believe their own illusion. They had spent years convincing themselves I was weak, submissive, dependent. That blindness became my advantage. They never once suspected the storm building beneath my silence. The night before the party, I stood in front of my mirror. My silver dress hung on the door, the same one I wore at the anniversary dinner. Back then, it was a plea for Ethan's attention. Tomorrow, it would be armor. I studied my reflection. My eyes looked different. no longer desperate, no longer pleading. They were steady, calm, unafraid. Tomorrow, Margaret would expect applause. Tomorrow, Ethan would expect admiration. And tomorrow, under the light of her chandeliers, I would give them something else entirely. The truth. The night of Margaret's birthday glittered with excess. Chandeliers bathed the ballroom in gold, strings of pearls draped from crystal vases, and laughter rang like music over the string quartet's gentle notes. Waiters in black vests carried trays of champagne, weaving between gowns and tuxedos. It was everything Margaret loved: wealth, admiration, attention. She stood near the entrance in emerald silk, jewels sparkling at her throat, greeting each guest with air kisses and hollow compliments. Ethan lingered at her side, his confidence rehearsed, his smile polished. They looked untouchable, as though humiliation could only belong to others. I entered alone. My silver dress shimmered under the lights, the same one I had worn at the anniversary dinner, but this time it wasn't a plea. It was armor. Whispers followed me as I crossed the marble floor, a quiet ripple of curiosity. I met Margaret's eyes. For the briefest moment, her smile faltered, then returned sharper than before. The evening unfolded with speeches, toasts, the endless performance of perfection. I waited, calm, rehearsed, my pulse steady beneath the noise. When the music paused and the lights dimmed, I stepped forward. My heels echoed against the marble as I approached the microphone. "Good evening," I said, my voice carrying through the hush. I wanted to give Margaret a gift tonight, something from the heart. After all, what's family without honesty? The screen behind me flickered to life. At first, smiling family photos, Margaret beaming with pride. She straightened, smug, believing this moment was hers. But the slide shifted. Bank statements, hotel receipts, screenshots of Ethan's messages to another woman. Gasps swept the room, whispers rising like a storm. Ethan froze, his face pale, his smile gone. Before anyone could recover, the next slide played, a recording. Margaret's voice filled the ballroom, cruel and undeniable. "She was never one of us. Don't let guilt trap you. I'll handle her when the time comes." The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the murmurs, sharp, horrified, relentless. Business partners leaned away from Ethan. Friends exchanged glances, disgust etched on their faces. Margaret's hand trembled around her champagne glass, her mask cracking for the first time. I looked out at them all. For years I was told to stay quiet, to endure, to shrink until I nearly disappeared. Tonight I'm finished being silent. Tonight, you see the truth. The man who betrayed his vows, and the mother who celebrated my destruction. Ethan lurched forward, his voice low, desperate. "Olivia, stop this." I cut him off with calm precision. "No, Ethan. You stopped us the moment you signed those papers." The whispers turned into a wave. Margaret's guests shifted uncomfortably, their admiration turning to scorn. Relatives averted their eyes. Partners whispered about contracts they would no longer sign. The empire they built on image and deceit cracked under the weight of truth. I placed the microphone down gently, my hand steady, my heart strangely light. Humiliation had been their weapon. Tonight, it was mine. As I walked across the ballroom, heels striking against the marble, no one stopped me. No one spoke. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. Every eye was on me. But this time, it wasn't pity. It was power. Walking out of that ballroom, I felt lighter than I had in years. For so long, I thought strength meant silence. Enduring humiliation, swallowing pain, convincing myself that sacrifice was the same as love. But silence only made me smaller. That night, under the chandeliers Margaret had polished for her glory, I finally understood that strength isn't quiet endurance. Strength is truth spoken aloud, no matter who trembles beneath it. Margaret believed she could script my erasure. Ethan believed betrayal would remain hidden. But when the lights dimmed and the truth played for every guest to see, they stood exposed. Their empire of image shattered in seconds, their reputations crumbling in front of the very people they had worked so hard to impress. The same stage they built for me to break became the one where they unraveled. Revenge didn't erase the scars, but it gave me something more valuable, my dignity. Have you ever realized that freedom doesn't come from being accepted, but from refusing to be diminished? That night, I walked away, not as the woman they mocked, but as the woman who refused to stay silent any longer. I don't know what the future will look like, but I know it belongs to me now. I will never again beg for love in a room designed to erase me. And if Margaret or Ethan ever speak my name, it will not be in triumph. It will be in memory of the night I chose myself. If this story resonated with you, stay with me here on Revenge Inside. Share your thoughts in the comments, tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories of betrayal, strength, and justice. Because here, silence ends, and voices rise.